Good morning, good morning. I woke up like 15 minutes ago. Let's go. I'm sorry. I'm gonna wake up throughout the video, but thank you so much for tuning in. We're gonna watch something great. I'm pretty sure it's gonna every Warhammer Fantasy explained old world Total War Warhammer 3. So we did the part 1. That is every Warhammer Fantasy faction explained part 1. This one doesn't say part 2, but it says old world, so I'm not 100% sure if that is part 2. But I have been like looking through her videos, and this is as close as we can get to part 2. It should be part 2. I'm pretty sure it's part 2, but I'm looking forward to it either way. Maybe I'm gonna learn what the old world is, maybe. And maybe we should just start. This is gonna be a long one. It's 1 hour 19, the original. But Warhammer people, you guys, you're hardcore when it comes to like long videos. So we're gonna be able to do this together, right? I'm excited. The last one was so good. I feel like I learned so much about the fantasy world. I knew nothing, Jon Snow. Nothing. But after the previous one, I was like, holy shit, the ogres, they're so hardcore. They're so cool. And there were so many cool things about the first one. So I have a feeling this one is going to be good as well. I did butcher a lot in the last one. I think I said that 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀 might be like from Mongolia or something. But it's super Russian and super like, what is it called? Like some people said like Poland and stuff like that. So I guess I screwed that up. But that is okay. That is why I'm here, to screw up facts, okay? No, I'm just here to give my gut feeling and have fun and try to learn as best as I can.
Well, here
Ole,
it is, the
it.
biggest video.
Let's just go, Ole. Let's just go.
Well, here it is, the biggest video I have ever done. So sit back, relax, and strap in, because this will indeed be a long one. This video has very much been a labor of love. The last video I did covering the factions of Warhammer Fantasy / Total War Warhammer got a ton of love and hype. So I figured...
So it is number 2. It is part number 2. Nice. I nailed it. I nailed it, guys.
Now that Immortal Empires is coming out for Total War Warhammer 3, let's keep this train going. So today we're going to cover an absolute truckload of factions for Warhammer Fantasy. And a lot of the factions we're going to go through today are a ton of fan favorites. Certainly my favorite factions are included in the video today. So I'm super excited to go through those with you. And if you haven't watched any other videos in this series, don't worry about it. I'm going to link them all at the end of this video. And very briefly, Warhammer Fantasy is a dark fantasy world based very roughly on the geography of the real life world. And aside from some broad cultural similarities, it's a pretty fantastical landscape. And from this setting, there is a tabletop miniatures game. In fact, there's a new one coming out called The Old World. There is a video game called Total War Warhammer. Now we're on the 3rd iteration of that. And at the time of recording, Immortal Empires is coming out for that, which will create the entire world of Warhammer in its game borders. So you'll be able to play as basically any faction ever. So you're gonna wanna watch this. And
that is nice. That is nice. Oh wait, what is this?
Finally, there is also a tabletop role-playing game called Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, done by Cubicle 7. And if you don't know anything about Warhammer Fantasy, don't worry. I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know today.
Hell yeah! This is my dream is coming true here, guys. My dream is coming true. She's gonna tell me everything. But I'm still gonna ask some questions that I'm probably gonna get the answer for later. Or I already got some answers for it, but I'm too thick to be understanding it, you know? But I was thinking like, sometimes I say like, oh, I separate it like 40k and Total War. And then other times I do like, I say like, oh, 40k and fantasy. So I do like, I don't know, I use Total War and fantasy like synonyms, but I understand it's not, right? Because you have the tabletop, and then you have the game, and then you have the you can role play. But that is not, yeah. So like for example here, role play, that is like Warhammer Fantasy. It is not Warhammer Total War, right? So fantasy, I'm trying to like understand here. And then you have Warhammer, but this is not Total War either. It's just Warhammer. But I guess that is, the game of fantasy battles. Okay, so I'm just gonna give my guess here that fantasy is like the main branch. And then you have branches out of fantasy, which is like the roleplay, the tabletop, and the Total War. But did Total War follow everything in fantasy? And also with the board games, are they like following the fantasy 100%? Or is it like big changes inside of each of those games that is like doing so that, no, you can't talk about, if you talk about Total War, you're not necessarily, the lore there is not necessarily the same as in the tabletop. Is that a thing? This is confusing to me, and it's so confusing to me that I'm not even able to say, ask my question.
So join me as today we focus on the people and places of the old world, aka Fantasy Europe. So let's do this. So first up, we're gonna have the
So that is the old world. Fantasy Europe. That is the old world.
old world, aka Fantasy Europe. So let's do this. So first up, we're gonna have the Empire of Man. And
Hell
that's
yeah.
a pretty arrogant title, considering that there are other empires and they also consist of humans, aka men. So yeah, I guess they just claim that title. They are the beating heart of the old world and very much the largest socio-political organization there. In terms of aesthetic, style, and culture, they're kind of roughly based around the Holy Roman Empire. And they are 100% my favorite faction. I love these guys. I used to collect an army of them for Warhammer Fantasy, the old miniatures war game. And I'm gonna be honest, every single opportunity I have in Total War Warhammer, I play as them. I buy the new faction DLC, and then I start up a new campaign as Karl Franz, the Emperor of Man.
So it's like, oh, this is the new playable faction here. But hell no, I'm not gonna do that. I wanna play France. I wanna be France. Carl. I wanna be Carl. But, whoa. I think I'm gonna be like the total opposite. When I play Total War, I'm gonna play Total War. It's on the list. It's gonna be happening very soon, I think. When I do that, and it's gonna be videos on my YouTube, I think I'm gonna try different factions, because I'm like struggling so hard to pick a favorite, you know? I just love them all. It's so interesting. Maybe there's some factions I don't like, but I don't know about them yet. So far, I like them all.
And I'm super stoked to be able to play them in Total War Warhammer 3. And honestly, if you have interacted with Warhammer in any capacity, you have probably bumped into these guys. They are very much the sort of default faction in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So the Empire itself is really vast and multifaceted, and partly this is because the Empire is often the focus of Warhammer media. And seriously,
yeah.
this video could be like 6 hours long, just on the Empire, and we would be missing stuff. So in the interest of my health and your attention span, let's go over it a little bit more briefly than that.
Yep,
so the
let's do
Empire
that.
is the largest human-centric faction in the entire world of Warhammer Fantasy, although describing it as a faction is a little bit misleading. It's more like a pseudo-coalition of different states. And each of these states is ruled over by a noble known as an elector count. And these elector counts answer only to the emperor. And they are called elector counts because they elect the next emperor, usually when the previous one died, usually because of the actions of an elector count. And of course, this is Warhammer, so everything has to be
So they kind of stabbed the emperor, right? I feel like this is has some similarities to the Roman Empire, for sure. It's very similar. It's very similar. Wow. It's interesting.
a little bit bigger, a little bit more fantastical, and the mark of an elector count is the Runefang. These are ancient dwarf-smith magical weapons that were created in the very first days of the Empire. During the time of the very first emperor. This first emperor was Sigmar Heldenhammer. And he has since become a god. He's been totally deified and now he's worshipped throughout the empire. You might have heard of him. He is the Greek god Sigmar.
I'm starting to understand Sigmar a little bit. Damn, man. Sigmar's cool. He started out like a man and then he became a god. Then he did a good job. He did good for himself.
Now, despite this, Sigmar isn't the only god that is worshipped throughout the Empire. There are a bunch of different gods.
Heresy.
And probably one of the most contentious is the wolf god, 𝗦ci. And actually in the northern states of the Empire, 𝗦ci is like the main god. And that has caused a lot of problems historically in the Empire, because down south they mostly worship Sigmar. And a recurring theme in Warhammer Fantasy is the further north you go, the more troubles you end up dealing with. And the northern states of the Empire tend to be perceived of as more barbaric by the more cosmopolitan south states. But if you ask any individual state of the Empire who has it hardest, they will inevitably say that they do. Warhammer Fantasy is just a hard place to live, basically.
This is giving me some 40k vibes. It's like, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. Wow. I was having a feeling that Fantasy World was also a little bit like hardcore. It wasn't like only spa and cucumbers in your eyes. It's more like hard. But I still had this little like fantasy imagination going on with like some sexy wizards chilling out, some grapes maybe involved. I don't know, something like that. But I don't think I'm gonna get that.
So let's run through briefly every single state in the Empire. So in no particular order, the provinces are, you've got the Reichland led by Karl Franz. This is the seat of the Empire and of Altdorf, the capital of the Empire. Reichland is a, quote, big deal. Then you have Ostland, which is led by Valmir von Rukov. This is the northernmost province of the Empire. It is constantly at war. People who live here tend to be pretty tough. You have Hochland, led by Aldebrand Ludendorff. This is basically Diet Ostland. Famously, the Hochland long rifles originate from here. There is Talbigland, led by Helmut Feuerbach. This place has lots and lots of forests, some better than others. There's Wissenland, which is led by Emanuel von Leibowitz. This place is often referred to as the Armory of the Empire. It contains the city of Nuln. And Nuln is the largest, most industrialized city in the entire world. It has a ton of workshops and factories, and they are famous for their black powder weapons. Oh yeah, boys, we got ourselves cannons and guns. Also famously, Elspeth von Draken lives here as well. She's one of the most powerful amnestist wizards in all of the world, aka Death Wizard. There is the Nordland, led by Theodric Gosser. This is a very Viking-inspired province, and they are constantly battling the Norskins. There is Middenland, led by Boris Todbringer.
Whoa, what is going on his head there? That is so cool. Look at that. It's it almost looks like the entrance of a fortress. It only needs the bridge going down in front there. Wow, and he's looking like someone that has seen things with one eye, because the other one is kind of screwed. Whoa. And the beard, next level. I love it. These are so hardcore and cool, like characters. Why do I say characters? Characters, Ole. Wow. It is like all of them are epic. And I love that. I love it.
Who's probably one of the most famous Empire characters, second only to Karl Franz. And the Middenland is the big northern province that often rivals the Reichland. They're also the seat of worship for 𝗦ci. They're one of those provinces we were talking about before in terms of sectarian violence, shall we say. There is Ostermark, led by Wolfram Hetwig. This is a frontier province surrounded by vampires, greenskins, and basically Russians. There is Averland, which is currently contested.
Did she say that the Russians are vampires and greenskins? I'm just kidding there. But the people she talked about is Russian, and they are surrounded by vampires and greenskins, right? I think I understand.
Actually, and it guards the main highway into Greenskin territory, aka Orc territory.
Wow.
There is Stirland, led by Albrecht Hausen. These names. Albrecht
Albrecht Haupt Andersen. It's Andersen? What? Andersen in Norwegian. for some reason I thought it was Haupthausen.
Hosen. This province absorbed the territory of Sylvania into it, which means that now it is absolutely chock full of vampires.
Ooh.
Whoops. And there is also the Mootland, which is full of halflings. So you know, you're gonna want to avoid this place unless you want to get halfling fever, aka stench food. Seriously, the halflings are a really interesting race.
This must be like, is this where Lord of the Rings hobbits are from? Did this come first and then the Lord of the Rings came later? Because could have been. I feel like Warhammer, as I understand it, is like the base of a lot of like things that have happened, right? Or is that something people just tell me to show how cool it is and then it's not even true? I don't know.
We're not really going to go through them today. They are a sort of minor part of the Empire, but they have their own little society.
Minor part? Just because they're small? I'm kidding here.
Today, they are a sort of minor part of the Empire, but they have their own little society here, and they are treated pretty poorly by their neighbors. Yeah. But seriously, if you want to live anywhere in the Warhammer world, it's probably going to be the Mootland. Drink beer, eat food, relax all day, and they have the greatest holiday in the entire world of Warhammer, Pie Week. What's not the love?
Pie Week?
And there is also Marienburg, which technically isn't actually part of the Empire. It's kind of a long story, but it's a good one. Marienburg itself is basically Amsterdam. Almost all of the trade that pours into the Empire goes through the port of Marienburg.
Wow.
And years ago, there was a sort of political crisis. The Elector Count of the Westerland, who actually owned Marienburg, died without an heir, and this caused a huge political problem in the Empire. The famous Emperor Magnus did not know who to appoint. There was brewings of a civil war. Every family basically wanted to own Marienburg because Marienburg is one of the most fabulously wealthy cities in all of the Empire. And rather than appoint any one noble family as owning Marienburg and causing potentially that civil war, he instead elected to put the ruling merchant families of Marienburg itself in charge. Which was kind of novel. This meant that no particular noble family felt slighted. And then years later, the Emperor Dieter raised the taxes on sausages and beer. The entire empire revolted and Marienburg declared its independence. And subsequent emperors, including Karl Franz, refused to acknowledge the independence of Marienburg, but they can't really do anything about it.
Holy shit. This is like, this is so... I feel like this, I'm gonna butcher a couple of things here because that is fun. That is fun. And you guys can be angry if you want to, but it's fun to butcher some things. I feel like they went a capitalistic route in the what's it called? Manisburg or something? Where it's like, okay. We don't want to have like one guy ruling you guys because that's gonna make a mess. So you're all getting some shares in the city here. Not all of you, but the rich people. And then you run it, okay? And then they wanted to make more money, and then it's problems. And also, the rulers didn't want to, or like the emperor didn't want to like acknowledge the independence. Sounds like something else that is going on in the world. Holy crapper. It's wild. It's wild. But I guess fantasy has like, it is based on the real world, even though it's not based on like current situations. It is based on the real world, so it makes sense that there's a lot of like parallels going on. You can see a lot of the real world in there. Super interesting. I love this.
The place is just too wealthy. It's got too much money and a pretty big standing army of mercenaries. So there's a ton of different provinces.
I'm gonna guess they have some ogres as mercenaries. Mercenaries? Probably, because they like money, right? They like the coins.
Much money and a pretty big standing army of mercenaries. So there's a ton of different provinces and they actually change throughout time. In Total War Warhammer, for example, there is the old province of Solent, which has been basically sort of reborn and led by the High Patriarch of Magic in all of the Empire, Balthasar Gelt. And so really, what Sigmar managed to achieve in uniting all of these people under the banner of the Empire of Man was really impressive and relatively temporary. In fact, Sigmar should be more famed for his diplomacy, really. He even forged an alliance with the dwarfs, which is no easy feat when we get around to them. You'll see about that. Now, in the sort of contemporary time period of Warhammer Fantasy, the current emperor is Karl Franz. And he is known as a heroic and noble figure, although, fun fact, in the very first edition of Warhammer Fantasy, he was just some throwaway, kind of corrupt noble. It wasn't until the second edition of Warhammer Fantasy that he became the sort of griffin-riding hero that we all know and love today. And famously, he wields 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀, which is the proverbial Warhammer of Warhammer Fantasy.
That is so cool.
This is a magical weapon that was gifted to Sigmar himself by the dwarfs. And despite the pomp and circumstance, I would say that the most gifted strength of Karl Franz is his statesmanship. It is not easy to keep the quarreling and bickering elector counts from turning on one another. Civil war is not unknown in the Empire. And indeed, a large part of the conflicts for the Empire in many different Warhammer Fantasy media is political conflict. There are often political issues that need to be resolved. The Empire itself is a living, breathing place, and all of its constituent parts slot together in a kind of messy way, but one that feels very real. And by far, it is the most fleshed out part of the setting. It isn't even close. And so for that reason, it's easy to see why there was a ton of fans of the Empire who were kind of upset that it all just went whoosh with Age of Sigmar. I mean, you go from this fully realized fantasy world into what is ostensibly the setting of a MOBA. So moving on.
What? Basically the setting of a MOBA. Oh. Like I totally understand, like without being like involved in like this part of the drama. I do see that if you're like super like into the lore, you know everything, you have like thought yourself all the nooks and crannies, and you're very happy about that universe, you like to escape into it and you like to like enjoy it, and then they just like tear it apart and ruin it and destroy it and flush it down to the into the toilet, and they start over again with something that is so young and unflushed out. So I understand the feeling. I think because I got empathy. You know, one of those things. I do have that in my body, so I understand that. But holy crapper, I'm very glad though that this fantasy universe exists and I can jump into it now, even though it's not like it's not a 2023 thing. But that doesn't matter. It can still be fantastic. So I'm happy.
Away from the politics side of things and instead to the battlefield, it's really hard to pin down what exactly the Empire's thing is. Really, if it's anything at all, it's versatility. This is true for the lore, for the fluff, as well as for the tabletop game and for the video games. The Empire has always been a flexible series of moving parts that work well together. Honestly, they can pretty much do anything you want them to do. They have infantry, they have cavalry, they have bows, they have firearms. They have indeed learned the secrets of black powder. And they have invented some incredibly impressive artillery pieces. Famously, the Hellstorm rocket battery. It's one of my favorites. Something fun about just launching rockets at your opponent. Speaking of which, famously, the Empire has command of what are known as steam tanks. Yes, steam tanks. They have tanks, and they are as intimidating and frightening as you can imagine.
What? They're the coolest. Holy shit, look at that steam tank. It's just, whoa. It's half boat, half trolley, half tank, half, what is that, the skull? And it has a really cool pipe. Oh, they're so cool though. I wanna play it right now.
Various states of the Empire also specialize in different types of combat. So for example, you have the Karabberg Greatswords, or the Nordland Seahawks, or the Nuln Ironsides, one of my favorites. Cool. And they are very toolboxy army. They basically have a tool for every single problem that is presented. It's just that they're not going to necessarily have the best solution to those problems. And
yeah, I can see that. If it's like melee, maybe an orc is coming in and being like, orc smash, and a lot of damage, or ogre, for sure, ogre, or giant. for sure. You're not gonna have like a man that is like wielding a sword just being like as hard hitting in the melee as a giant. But you probably have 100 of those like soldiers ready to fight. So they're good in melee as well, probably. But I can see that. I can see that. Maybe like the elves are really good at shooting with the arrows, and the men here with the guns, they're really good at shooting like with the guns. But maybe the elves are even better at shooting with the arrows. Wow. Can you mix and tricks the armies so you can have like a little bit of shooting, a little bit of like melee, a little bit of stabby with the long lance? Curious.
They just don't really excel in anything. And in terms of magic, there is the famous colleges of magic. This is currently led by 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀, as we mentioned before. He is the supreme patriarch. And he is what's known as a gold wizard. There are lots of different schools of magic, depending on the winds of magic. And humans are not able to harness magic as well as, say, the high elves are. Originally, humans were taught magic by the high elves, but where high elves can master every single school of magic, humans are too short-lived for that. So
every single school of magic? Wow. I've heard that if you do too much, then you can turn evil, right? The evil can take you. The evil Knievel or something. I'm not 100% sure.
They can mostly master a single one. There has never been a human who has been able to master more than one school of magic. And all this is to say that the Empire, just because they're the human faction, doesn't make them mundane. They still have a ton of magic, they still have a ton of fantastical elements to them. For another example, there's also the Demigryph Knights, who are their elite shock cavalry, and these are knights that ride atop demigryphs, these monsters. And of course, that's not to mention the warrior.
Yeah, someone mentioned that in a previous video I reacted to, where it was griffins just running in and not flying, and I was like, why are they not flying, bro? And someone told me, they don't have wings, bro. So it makes sense. Demi-griffins. They're really cool though, even though they don't have wings. They're still very cool.
Priests as well, which are holy warriors who are infused with the power of Sigmar. And they have the power to inspire troops, as well as heal them, and also deal a ton of holy damage with their big old warhammers. In summation then, the Empire is famously comprised of faith, steel, and gunpowder. That's just the way old Discourse likes them. That's the geography, politics, and battlefield for the Empire. But there is, of course, the peasantry. The working Joe, the man on the street or in the field. And what would it like to be one of those people in the world of Warhammer Fantasy? Not great. And for one, there's an absurd tax on sausage and beer. But also, Warhammer Fantasy is a dark fantasy. And it's clear that the writers of the setting were trying to depict a time that consisted of a lot of dirt, a lot of toil, a lot of suffering, and early death. But on top of all that sort of real world problems, there's also a ton of issues that are specific to the world of Warhammer. There is the corruption of chaos. We haven't even touched on the work of the witch hunters, who go from village to village, interrogating and torturing those who are perceived as being perhaps touched by chaos.
This is basically the Inquisition in 40k, right? The witch hunters. That is really cool. Look at him. He's hardcore and cool.
They like to operate by the motto of better safe than sorry. And the world itself is...
innocence proves nothing, right? Damn!
Is pretty actively hostile to life. If you walk into a forest that contains wood elves and beastmen, you are likely not ever wandering out. All the while, you are likely toiling in the dirt for phantom conflicts taking place in far-off places that you will never yourself witness, hopefully. And I think one of the things that surmises life in the Empire the best are, if you go and you look at the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game, and you look at the professions available to play in that game. Sure, you can be a wizard or a fighter, those classic fantasy classes. But really, the vast majority of potential professions in that game, they're things like grave robber or rat catcher or simply just peasant. And this is represented in the role-playing game as giving you a random chance to find out what profession you have. You roll a D100 and you see what you get. And that's us. We've just touched upon the very surface of the Empire. Like I said before, We could literally spend hours and hours and hours, but we gotta move on. So if you do want to ever see a big deep dive of the Empire on this channel, just let me know in the comments below. And next up, we have the dwarfs. That's with an F, not a V-E-S. I'm watching you, Token. So dwarfs...
Dwarfs.
are many things. They are an old race. They are skilled, sturdy, honorable, but without a doubt, the thing that comes to mind for most people when they think dwarves are grudge.
Yes!
Not like the movie, but the concept of holding a grudge. Because despite the fact that the dwarves have created many wonders, indeed, it is said that they have tunnels that span the entire world.
What?
They have created incredible underground kingdoms and mountain holdfasts, and they are master engineers. It is still the fact that the thing that people remember most about dwarves is that they are vengeful and stubborn. It is well known across the entire world to never get on the wrong side of a dwarf.
It is very cool that I almost just watched the trailer with the grudge bearer, the dwarf, and that trailer was so good. And in the comments, I learned so much about the dwarfs, and now listening to this, it's very cool.
Across the entire world to never get on the wrong side of a dwarf. So with that said, let's go through the gods of the dwarfs. There are 3 ancestor gods. You've got Grimnir, the god of battle. You've got 𝗦cie, the god of home, healing, and brewing, of course, appropriately. And you have Grugni, the god of mining and smithing. And really, that says it all about dwarven society. Now, importantly, these gods aren't worshipped the way that other races would worship their gods. Rather, they're seen as examples to live by. A dwarf warrior might model themselves on Grimnir, for example, aim to be as honorable and fearless as they are. And in terms of society, dwarves judge one another based on many factors: how rich they are, how skillful they are, but most importantly, how old they are. Dwarves can live for hundreds of years, their beards growing the entire time. Young dwarves are often called beardlings, and older dwarves are called greybeards. Fun fact, that is also the same terminology used to describe people who've been in gaming circles for long enough. Now, dwarves take great pride in their beards. It's one of the most important things to them. It's where they place their sense of honor. So what happens when they lose it? Well, one of the unique parts of dwarves that is one of my favorite aspects of them actually, is that they never lose their sense of shame. So if you imagine the most shameful thing you have ever done in your entire life, it doesn't hit as hard now as maybe it did right when you did it. Not true for a dwarf. They don't just lie awake at night remembering all the things that brought them the most shame the way that humans do. They spend the rest of their lives in that moment, feeling the exact intensity of shame as the day the event occurred. And for many dwarves, this is unbearable. Especially considering that in dwarven society, your word is everything. A dwarf would sooner die than break an oath. Indeed, they have a specific word for the term oathbreaker. It's known as an 𝗦cie, and it is one of the worst insults that could ever be levied. And if a dwarf finds themselves in this position, the shame of that leads them to what can only be described as an act of eventual suicide. In such instances, they shave off their beard, they shave their hair into a mohawk, and they take the oath of the Slayer. And this is an oath to seek out great battles, great monsters to slay, until they are killed in battle. And from that day forward...
Wow, it's so cool that they don't just go for suicide, they go for suicide by war. That is hardcore. They want to do the best they can before they go. Holy shit. They are hardcore then. They're very hardcore.
There is nothing else that matters to them except for their righteous death. It is the only font by which they can remove themselves from the shame that they feel, to mitigate it in some way. That and drinking themselves comatose, hence the god of brewing. A good example of the Slayer is Umgrim Ironfist, aka the Slayer King of Carrick Cadron. One thing to note about him is that he has a very long beard. The reason for this is that he shaved it off a really long time ago. Seems like no matter how hard he tries, he just can't die.
That makes him hardcore. Wow. I love the dwarves so much. They're so cool. They're really cool. I think I like dwarves more than the Empire. don't hate me, but hate me. You're allowed to hate me. You can do whatever you want to do. But I think they're cooler.
It's not like he's invincible. He's just fucking nuts. Just nothing can seem to kill him. He keeps trying, and he just keeps killing things that he goes up against. He's kind of a badass. Now, there are many different kingdoms of dwarves with many different kings, but without a doubt, there is one famous king who stands up above all others. It is the current High King of the Dwarves, 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 Grudgebearer. This title is both symbolic and literal, as 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 does carry the 𝗦ici𝗰𝗶 crown, which is a huge book that contains all of the historical grudges ever born against the dwarven peoples. It is also written in the blood of high kings. Perhaps the most famous examples of grudges written in that book are those against the high elven king, 𝗦ci𝗰𝗋 II, a king who...
I heard about some beard chopping. Let's see if she's gonna tell about that, because that is very interesting. How the hell did that happen?
Famously started the War of the Beard, which was a war between the High Elves and the Dwarves, because King 𝗦ci𝗰𝗋 II shaved the beard of some dwarven ambassadors, and then dared the High King 𝗬tric Starbreaker to come and get the shavings. He did. So those grudges still sit in the book, but it should be noted that both 𝗬tric and 𝗦ci𝗰𝗋 II are long dead. This happened eons ago. Yet the grudge remains.
Keeping the
grudge. Takes a lot to strike a grudge out of the book. And right now 𝗦ci𝗰𝗋 is too busy battling against the orcs over the ancient dwarf homeland to really settle the score against the high elves. But the book remains and the grudges inside, and so long as those grudges continue to exist, the Greybeards will grumble about it. But back in their day, they would never have let a grudge stand for so long. But it must be remembered that for the dwarves, overall, they are a dying race. As much as they do have tunnels that span the entire world, as they have great halls, many of those are empty or have been taken over by orcs and greenskins or by the 𝗬𝗏𝗀, the ancestral enemies of the dwarves. Many of the dwarf holds have fallen. There just aren't enough dwarves anymore. They have been whittled down by the world. But there is still some small amount of hope. There are still attempts to reclaim some of the ancient holds. For example, 𝗏𝗏 Ironhammer has a quest to reclaim Carrick 8 Peaks from 𝗏scarsnic, the hated goblin, who is a filthy little creature and who leads the night goblins, who we'll probably touch on a bit later.
Wow.
Now, in terms of the battlefield, dwarves are basically the same all over. They're a brick wall. They don't move very fast, and even their archers, who are known as quarrelers, by the way, which is a little bit of wordplay that I've always loved, they're very heavily armored as well. And they're pretty notable for being able to stand up to cavalry charges, to something not every faction in the game can say. A regular dwarf warrior can basically withstand a lot more punishment than any man. But without a doubt, the peak dwarf concept of infantry are the Ironbreakers. These dwarfs are basically more armor than dwarf at this stage, and they serve...
That is so cool. It's just a hunk of metal going into war.
As the counterpoint to the opposite end of the spectrum, who are the completely unarmored Slayers that we talked about earlier. Slayers, of course, being just whirling axes.
Yeah, because they don't care. They're like, I want to die in this war, but I want to die by taking out as many as I can, which makes it... So that is really cool. So you have both the most armored and the least armored. It's very cool.
The guy. Dwarves also shine in making things explode, so they do have a ton of artillery as well. In fact, their artillery is probably unmatched by any other faction, except for maybe the 𝗬𝗏𝗀 and at a push, humanity. Their organ guns and cannons can shoot enemies completely apart, and their Iron Drakes are heavily armored flamethrower troops, which is totally fucking badass. Though it must be said, the dwarves discovered gunpowder millennia ago, way before humans. In fact, they were the ones who introduced gunpowder to the humans, but the humans have got a lot more variety of artillery and they've pushed the concept further. And the reason for this is that dwarven technology moves very slow. As a species, they are incredibly cautious, perhaps too much so. And in fact, despite having gunpowder for millennia, many dwarfs still perceive gunpowder as a bit newfangled. Back in their old dad's day, they wouldn't have resorted to this sort of tomfoolery.
That is really cool. But I guess maybe when they first use technology, they use it properly to just nail it, probably. I'm just guessing here.
Didn't need no guns when we broke Calidor. Nevertheless, they do have some maneuverability on the battlefield as a result of their technological prowess. Maybe slow, but dwarf technology is very dependable. And for that reason, they have the gyrocopter.
Nailed it.
These are flying machines, and they can perform strafing runs on their enemies, so that's pretty badass. Another little twist to dwarves as well is their relationship with magic, or lack thereof, really. Dwarves don't really do magic. In fact, they're pretty resistant to it.
Wow.
In Warhammer Fantasy Battles, they had a special mechanic, which meant that they were harder to impact with magic. They had magical resistance. But as a result of that, they also can't become wizards. They can't practice the art of magic. They can't harness the winds of magic. Now, to compensate for that, they can inscribe magical runes into their armor, into their equipment, into their weapons, even into their buildings. But nevertheless, other factions can do things like call down magical meteors, and dwarves will just never be able to do that. It's always been much more subtle.
Yeah.
Still, never
subtle. Wink, wink. But I guess that doesn't bother me at all, because that just makes it even more interesting, you know? It's more variety in the classes and factions, not classes probably.
Nevertheless, though you might be able to outrun a dwarf, you'll probably never be able to overpower one or outgun them. And next we have Chaos Dwarves. In order to explain Chaos Dwarves, or 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀 as they call themselves, it's important to remember all the information I told you about dwarfs, and then reverse it. They're like an evil murder.
They got no grudges, not a single one. They're tall, they don't have armor, and they also have a lot of armor. They don't have gunpowder, and yeah, they don't use runes. They use magic. Yeah, buddy, I nailed it. Let's just skip through them. No, I'm kidding.
Version of dwarfs. Just imagine them all with evil mustaches. Sort of, they still have beards, they're still dwarfs. But they are steeped in magic and worship. And neither of those are particularly wholesome. As their name suggests, they are deeply embroiled in the ruinous powers.
Whoa.
And it's sort of understandable how they'd end up this way too. So in the past, whenever the ancient dwarfs were first digging all the tunnels for the first time, some of them decided to strike out east towards the Mountain of Morn. And then they found themselves completely cut off from the rest of the underways by the ruinous powers, by chaos. And in this grim and inhospitable place, the very magics of chaos itself warped them. And it twisted them, both mentally and physically. And so, in their desperation, they turned to the fire god 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀. And he became their, quote, father of darkness. Which is, you know, not exactly the nicest god in the world. Nope. Still not the worst though, in fairness. And so, the areas that the 𝗦cie𝗰𝗋 came to occupy soon became filled with forges, factories. They became barren with blasted earth and flowing lava. Or to put it simply, metal as fuck. And within this kingdom lies Azar Nagrund, a massive black tower of smog and ruinous energy.
Is this where the Tower of Mordor is from in the Lord of the Rings? Is it Tower of Mordor? The eye, Sauron, that is looking everywhere, you know? Maybe this is the inspiration for it. Maybe. You just change out the dwarves, chaos dwarves, with orcs. And then you're pretty close, maybe. Very cool though. And look at the horns on the tower. That is badass.
Massive black tower of smog and ruinous energy. Now, in terms of politics, the Chaos Dwarves operate in a system that you might term a theocratic magocracy. That is to say, the most influential and powerful among them are priests of 𝗦cie𝗰𝗋, who are also known as the demon smiths. Yeah. They use incredibly sophisticated smithing and engineering techniques, much like their classic dwarf brethren. However, they also happen to incorporate my favorite material in all of the world, the very powerful and incredibly unstable warpstone. This material is basically magic radiation. It's a ton of fun. It can have all sorts of deleterious effects.
Wow.
The oldest demon smiths
Wow.
in Chaos Dwarf society earned the title of Sorcerer Prophet, and the oldest of these priests of 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀 is Ostrogoth Ironhand. And despite his incredible
Iron
power,
Hand.
his sobriquet...
Wow, he's a little bit of a machine, that one. Oh my god, he has a club for an arm. Wow, and his beard is so long it's almost touching the ground. And he has like pipes from his back. It's like choo-choo. Oh, he's hardcore.
belies the horrible curse that awaits all demon smiths. For all of them will one day petrify and turn to stone. This starts with the extremities and works its way up the body.
They're getting
Indeed,
stoned?
Zarnogrand is lined with statues of what were once demon smiths. Ostrogoth himself has compensated for this petrification by lopping off the bits of flesh that were turning to stone and replacing them with metal.
That is
Hence
cool.
the fact he has a machined hand. Unpleasant, temporary, metal. But also Chaos Dwarves can also control powerful magics as well.
Wow.
And they use this to infuse metallic forms with demonic energies. And this can go from just infusing weapons or to the even more extreme. Chaos Dwarves can create demons of molten metal and steel. They are known as the Fireborn. The most famous of these is probably the Hell Cannon, which is literally just a demon inside a massive evil cannon that fires eldritch energies that are like homing beacons into their opponent.
That looked badass. Wow. I heard about some I heard about this in the comments of my previous video, that the dwarves can trap demons in machines. I was like, how the hell is that possible? And here we got it, guys. Here we got it. Wow, that is hardcore. And look how cool it is. It is so cool. It even got teeth, you know? It even got a mouth and teeth. And a big old hole. We're just gonna move on there.
Fires
sorry.
eldritch energies that are like homing beacons into their opponent.
Wow.
Yeah, how about that? Another thing they employ is a tremendous amount of slavery. Greenskin slaves are plentiful in Chaos Dwarf lands, both goblin, hobgoblin, and orc alike. In fact, the Chaos Dwarves, in some hideous ritual, created a being known as a Black Orc. This was an attempt to create a stronger, more reasonable, more subservient orc creature. The fact that Black Orcs can now be found across the entire world, often leading war bands of regular greenskins, speaks to how successful that endeavor was. Warhammer obviously pulls inspiration from a lot of different places, but it's hard not to see Barad-dûr and the Uruk-hai here quite vividly. And likely you've seen similar things before, like the Dark Iron Dwarves in Warcraft, who were probably more than likely cribbed from Chaos.
Wow, I never thought about that. I've been playing so much World of Warcraft. That is madness. I'm so sorry. But I'm not sorry. I need to say I'm not sorry more. But I got so like one-laned into there. Like I only played it, and I've decided to try and play more games, and it feels really good not being like limited to one game anymore. But yeah, it's kind of a first love, you know. Wow. But yeah, cool.
Dwarves. Fun fact, if you do want to have some Chaos Dwarf miniatures, the Mantic Games do a pretty awesome Abyssal Dwarfs. You can pretty much use them as Chaos Dwarves. Wow. And in battle, the Chaos Dwarves are a dark reflection of their cousins. They have extremely heavy armor and extreme offensive firepower. One big difference though is that the Chaos Dwarves do have access to some maneuverability. They have access to the Bull Centaurs. These are massive, half dwarf, half bull creatures that some Chaos Dwarves have mutated into.
Wow, and it's not even like half horse. It's half bull. That is hardcore and cool, man.
Rough week for those guys, I'm sure. As well as this, there is of course the Fireborn, like the Hell Cannon mentioned earlier. There's also Chaos Giants and hideous winged beasts, the Great Tauros.
Wow.
Overall, their armies are considerably more arcane than regular dwarfs. But nevertheless, their lessons in discipline, in drill, in firepower were not forgotten. So as much as there isn't a lot of Chaos Dwarfs around, they are pretty tough. They are a very intimidating foe, and I hope that when they're introduced in Immortal Empires that they reflect this fact. So, too long didn't read, Chaos Dwarves are fucking badass.
Yeah.
They are genuinely just a metal album made flesh, and then turn slowly to stone, unless they're so badass that they replace those bits of them with machinery. And now we come to fair Bretonnia. Bretonnia is many things. It is a beautiful country, a land full of honorable and chivalric knights. It is a place of honor, nobility, and pretty awful toil. This place is the Warhammer equivalent of France and is a pretty awful place to live if you're not a noble or knight. And indeed, it is the exploits and actions of nobles that Bretonnia is famed for. It is said that the Knights of Bretonnia are the greatest in the world, and though the Empire Knights may grumble about that, it's more than likely true. This is partially down to the culture and history of Bretonnia, but also the fact that many of the knights in Bretonnia are literally divinely inspired and imbued. Especially those knights that are known as the Grail Knights, not the band. And if you're hearing the term Grail Knight and you're thinking, gee, that sounds familiar, you're right. Bretonnia as a faction has been totally inspired by Arthurian legend. I mean, get this, the main religion of Bretonnia is worship of the Lady of the Lake. Yeah, it's a watery tart who chucks swords at you. But it is said that the Lady of the Lake bestows power upon those who seek her grace, on those who display chivalry, on those who she deems worthy. And of course, this has been inspired by the story of King Arthur and the nymph that bestowed him the sword Excalibur. So why was the movie about him pulling it out from a rock? What sword did he pull out from a rock? But he was cutting through armor like it was nothing. Okay, whatever. Now, in the case of the Lady of the Lake, she is perceived to be the embodiment of the land Bretonnia itself. And for knights to find her and to receive her favor, they have to set out on this grand, epic quest. They face challenges to prove their piety, their heroism, their honor, and if they prove themselves worthy, she anoints them with the Grail, which gives them divine powers. One thing to note about Bretonnia is that they are a massively segregated society when it comes to knights and gender. Only men are allowed to become knights. However, there are a lot...
#rude. It's not very like, is it progressive? Is that the right word? I don't know, but it's rude.
...of famous women who have pretended to be men in order to become knights.
Whoa,
one famous example of a knight who is a woman who does not pretend is Rapunzel de Leon. She is basically Joan of Arc. In fact, there are so many women who have pretended to be men in order to be anointed as knights in Bretonnian history that I suspect that it might be a bit of a monstrous regiment situation over there. In terms of location, if you're trying to situate this place in your mind, Bretonnia lies to the west of the Empire and it occupies a lot of fertile ground. And while Bretonnia is smaller than the Empire, it almost rivals it in agricultural output. The reason for that we'll get to in a minute. And as for relationship between Bretonnia and Empire as neighbors, it can be a little bit frosty. At some times in their history, they are stalwart allies, and at other times, they are bitter enemies. And Marienburg, if you remember those sausage lovers, they lie between the states of the Empire and Bretonnia. And there are many Bretonnian lords who would like to see Marienburg become a duchy of Bretonnia. Marienburg is such a rich port that, well, everybody wants a little piece of that pie.
Hell yeah.
But in all of history, Bretonnia has never managed to conquer Marienburg. And while both Bretonnia and the Empire are content to snap at each other with words and engage in a little bit of light raiding and looting across the borders, an all-out war between those two factions would be an absolute disaster for the stability of the old world. Now, when we talk about the Empire, we talk...
And I guess they also have so many other things to think about, you know? It's like, it's... What about the ogres, man? What about ogres? You know? We gotta fight them. Or the Vampire Pirates. Maybe we should fight them. Maybe.
Touched on the banality of peasantry and the brutality of feudalism, and for everything I said about the Empire, it goes like double, triple, quadruple for Bretonnia.
What?
Hence that economic output. While in the Empire, peasants toil in the fields and lords have almost absolute autonomy to do whatever they want, in Bretonnia, peasants are more like indentured servants. And the knights and lords of Bretonnia have absolute supremacy. To give you a bit of an idea of this, the nobles of Bretonnia often claims that the peasants that live within their lands have it no worse than anywhere else. After all, it's the watchful gaze of chivalry that defends them. But in law, it is illegal for a Bretonian peasant to learn how to read. Additionally, they are not allowed to leave the areas that they have been allocated to farm.
What?
And as a result, there
slavery,
could be a lack
basically.
of, shall we say, genetic diversity in their offspring.
No, is this real? That took a sudden turn. But like, I can see like the logic behind it, but it just took a little bit of a turn there. But okay. So it's like pretty bad there. It's pretty bad.
Just say they don't put step in front of brother. And in response to this
Whoa.
circumstance, you actually do get peasants who rise up against their lords. In fact, there are bands of Robin Hood-esque bandits known as 𝗦ici𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀. And these bandits inflict violence upon the nobles of Bretonnia, and many of them are led by these terrifying individuals known as the Faceless. The bravery of these individuals cannot be overstated because the actual punishment for revolt in Bretonnia is the death of you, so you'll be tortured and killed, but also the torture and kill of your entire family. Bretonnian lords like to practice a little art form known as collective punishment. It's important, I think, when talking about Bretonnia to understand what the term noble and chivalry really means. It's kind of something that happens to the nobles. The peasant class are not included in that. And certainly...
Suddenly the top dogs and dogs, I guess. Holy moly. That is wild and horrific. But I guess, yeah, it is like dark fantasy, so it gotta be a little bit horrific.
Nobles are not selfless. They may be born to rule, but nobody said that they had to do it well. Speaking of which, at the other end of the ladder, from the faceless and peasantry, you have the dizzying height of the supreme ruler of all of Bretonnia, the one known as the Royarch, essentially the king. Similar to the Empire, the original Royarch was someone who managed to unite the disparate peoples of Bretonnia under the rule of his one kingdom. And the current Royarch is 𝗦ici𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀, the Lion-Hearted, a particularly curiously ageless man. He resides in the capital of Bretonnia, Corone, and when he goes to battle, he rides a massive hippogriff he has named 𝗦ici𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀. And to be honest, in battle, he seems almost impervious to injury. So there's something going on there. And of course, 𝗦ici𝗰𝗋 himself is a Grail Knight, and he was actually specifically chosen by the Lady of the Lake to lead Bretonnia itself. A little bit of a divine right of kings thing going on here.
Yeah.
I didn't vote for you.
And to this end, she gifted him with a number of knights known as the Sons of Bretonnia. These are magically gifted knights that she created by stealing them away as children.
What?
And then returning them years later.
What?
Pretty normal times. By the by, 𝗦ici𝗰𝗋 himself would rule Bretonnia for many, many years until he does meet his death in the end times, unfortunately. He actually dies to the hands of a chaos champion known as 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 the Leech Lord. However, for Bretonnia itself, not all was lost, even at the death.
That must be such an epic battle, like the end times. Oh, is there any like, is that part of Total War Warhammer 3? Is it like in the end there's like a cool epic like fight? It better be good then. Better be good. Or is it just something they told people? Just like now it's ended and they put out some lore about it. Do you maybe you could answer me on that? It's very interesting. How did they go about killing Total War or fantasy? I mean, and make Age of Sigmar
Of their beloved king. Another famous character in Bretonnia is known as the Green Knight of Green Knight fame. He is a mysterious knight who genuinely can never die. He had rules like that in Warhammer Fantasy, the miniatures game. And he emerges from greenery, shows up, helps save the day, kills a bunch of the enemy, and then disappears off again. It is said that in Bretonnia's greatest time of need, the Green Knight shows up. Or
Damn.
in 500-point skirmish games where both players have agreed to the use of special characters. And he is very interesting. He's a mythical character who is real. He has shown up at various times in Bretonnia's history, indeed when Bretonnia needed him most. Additionally, questing knights who are seeking the favor of the Lady of the Lake are also said to run into him quite often, and he beats them into submission. The identity of the Green Knight is shrouded in mystery. There was often a lot of speculation as to who it could be or whether or not it was just some manifestation of the Lady of the Lake. And in the end times, it was revealed to be Giles the Breton, the original founder of the Kingdom of Bretonnia. And after the death of 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀, he goes on to lead Bretonnia throughout the end times.
Whoa! Is that what happened? Wow. Wow.
On the battlefield, the military of Bretonnia is as divided as it is societally. There is a very strict demarcation between the peasants and the not peasants. So peasant levies are plentiful. They are designed to clog up the enemy. You get a ton of them. They are typically pretty weak. Their morale is often quite low, and they are very poorly armed. The man-at-arms, the classic Bretonnian infantryman, is a foot slogger designed to basically soak up firepower from the enemy. Really, their job is to die. They don't get a lot of training, they get handed a spear, though the archers of Bretonnia, the longbowmen, are pretty fearsome. They actually came with spikes that they could put in the ground that would deflect against cavalry charges, which was quite interesting.
Smart.
However, in terms of lords and nobles, they ride horses, because of course they do.
Hell yeah.
And Bretonnia's knightly cavalry are second to none. One of the really fun aspects of Bretonnia is the fact that every single knight has their own suit of arms, their own colors, which means that when you got a huge horde of knightly cavalry charging, they were bedecked with various colors, and different orders and symbols and images. They do not wear a uniform. And the Grail Knights, of course, are the best of these. And more specifically, the Royal Pegasus and Hippogriff Knights who bear the royal insignia of the king dominate the skies. Oh yeah, we got knights not of just horses, but Pegasi and Hippogriffs. Bretonnia has a fucking air force.
They have an air force? I love this. And like the horses with wings, very cool, very cool. Nice to see even more stuff, you know? Oh my god, I love it.
For some reason, they decided not to use the bow, but to use the lance.
Okay, I'm back.
Literally lose the one advantage that being in the sky would grant you. It doesn't have to be sensible, right? They're knights. They don't want to use a bow and arrow. That's a peasant weapon. Let's be honest, it is pretty fucking badass to charge from the sky. Aside from those, you also get the Grail Guardians. These are a rare number of Grail Knights who have been chosen specifically to guard the Lady of the Lake's representatives in the world. The Fey Enchantresses. Fey Enchantresses, by the way, are women who have been chosen by the Lady of the Lake and who are imbued with her magic. Many Fey Enchantresses are served by what are known as damsels, who are also magically imbued as well, just to a smaller extent. And between those two, Bretonnia does have access to a lot of magic. It's very similar to the Empire, so they're versatile, but they also lose out to some of the more magically inclined races like the High Elves. And now we come...
yeah. Oh, are we gonna see the High Elves now? Or is this vampires?
To the vampire counts. I'm sorry, I think I'm like contractually obligated to say it that way. Vampire counts are really interesting. I once bought an army of them from a crackhead who needed drugs.
No, she did? Hopefully she got a good deal though. Oh my god. Let's go.
Ostensibly, they live within a very small section of the Empire. They, in theory, are quite minor. But to explain how they got there, I think we have to talk about 𝗦cije. So once, long ago, in an ancient city, definitely a good ghost story now, there was a great necromancer who created a powerful elixir to defeat death itself. And he was successful. Now, after him came a Queen Neferata, who sought to replicate his work, and she too was successful, though to a lesser extent, a more flawed extent. And it was from her that the curse of vampirism first sprung. She was indeed the first vampire and is known as the mother of vampires. But if she was the mother, then the great necromancer 𝗦cije was the father. And he wasn't exactly pleased with the existence of vampires. And in fact, he attempted to enslave all of the vampires by tempting them with the promise of true invulnerability. The vampires managed to escape his clutches and fled that ancient city, and many of them found themselves within the old world, specifically an eastern province of the empire, the damned land of 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀. And the ancient vampires who fled the clutches.
Wow, these are so cool. And I love that there is like a bigger backstory here. It's not just, here's vampires. It's like the pursuit of like living forever and stuff like that. That is really cool. And this artwork, man, it's so epic. I like the vampires a lot already.
Clutches of Nagash are still around today, but now they are outnumbered by their younger children, younger vampires, who they have created using what is known as the Blood Kiss. Now, there are various different bloodlines of vampires formed from 5 different families, and they are as follows. Firstly, you have the 𝗦cie, or to give them their more contemporary name, the von Karsteins. The famous Vlad von Karstein gave rise to the von Karstein bloodline, and they are often seen as the sort of default vampire family.
These looks hardcore. Wow. That is so cool. That is one of the coolest pieces of art I've seen in a while. It's so cool. It's so badass. Oh my god.
This is mostly due to their numbers and also their focus in the old vampire counts battle tomes. They exert power over animals and are mostly based on the Dracula, the classic tropes of Dracula. Also, by the by, control over animals also includes humans. You also have the blood.
Calling me an animal, lady? Oh my god! You calling me an animal? Well, it's pretty true. It's pretty true.
Blood Dragon bloodline, which, yes, is an absolutely incredibly f***ing badass name. This bloodline was founded by Abarash, the personal bodyguard to Queen Neferata, one of the greatest warriors of that ancient city, 𝗦cije𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀. Blood dragons are brutal vampiric knights, and they are terrifying.
Wow.
Some of them actually stick to knightly codes of conduct and vows. Abarash himself actually swore himself to Giles the Breton after facing him and being defeated in battle. So they're not all bad, although definitely they are terrifying and you should look out. They're gonna eat you. Next up we have the 𝗦cie bloodline. This was created by Queen Neferata herself.
Thumbs up.
These are known as the most devious and cunning of the bloodlines. And they can generally be found in positions of comfort and authority throughout the entire world. The 𝗦cie bloodline are all said to be spies of Queen Neferata herself, who resides in the Silver Pinnacle. There she plots her return to the ancient city.
Look at that! Holy shit! That's badass. Wow. And you can't see it behind my face here, but look at that guy in the bottom there. Holy crap. I don't want to fight that guy. I don't want to fight her either. I don't want to fight anyone, to be honest. Or maybe in a game. Sure.
City of 𝗦cije𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀. And to do so, she has infiltrated almost every single political court in the entire world. Anywhere you go, you will probably find a 𝗦cie vampire. Or rather, they will find you if you're important enough to be found. And as vampires, they actually pass as human the most easily. This family is almost all entirely female. There is also the 𝗦kark, the 𝗦kark bloodline. 𝗦kark. It's kind of a fun word to say.
Carcasses.
This was created by 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗃. This was Nefertari's priest and teacher, and it is the most magically inclined bloodline of them all.
Cool.
This magical power, however, comes with a price. 𝗦cie𝗰𝗃 himself decided not to feed on blood. You know, he's gonna be one of the cool kids, one of the cool vampires, not gonna feed on blood. Instead, he attempted to preserve himself on the power of necromantic energies. And as a result, all of those descended from his bloodline bear the guise of hideous corpses. They are the ones who look the most vampiric-like, the most like bodies. Although, not to be outdone, we come now to the final vampire bloodline, which are known as the Strigoi. This bloodline sprung from 𝗬șorin, the Queen Nefertari's youngest brother.
They look like beasts, though. They don't look any like human at all. And those long claws, they're so long. Damn, I don't want to fight that guy either. to be honest.
Against his sister's wishes, 𝗬🗏 actually partook in the vampire elixir, much to her annoyance, and actually she ended up despising him for it. And this resulted in a feral, mutated vampire bloodline. The 𝗬🗏 are scattered to the dark places of the world. They are monstrous and cannot hide themselves, and as a result, they are brutally hunted down by vampire hunters, by mortals. So that's the history, but to tell the story of the contemporary vampire counts, we're mostly concerned with the von Karstein bloodline and how they came to the imperial lands of 𝗬𝗏. It was a dark and stormy night. Otto von Drac, colloquially known as the Mad Count, lay dying in Castle Drakenhof, his seat of power in the cursed land of 𝗬𝗏.
Oh no.
He cursed the gods themselves for not leaving him with a male heir. His legacy could not continue on, but he was a cruel and unjust lord, fond of torturing peasants and popping their heads on spikes. Indeed, even the nobles of 𝗬𝗏 itself did not heed his commands. His authority was weak and he was not well loved. 𝗬𝗏 seethed with strife. It was an ill time for the lands and unrest was high. And as he lay dying on his deathbed, his legacy fading before his eyes, he declared that he would rather his daughter, the beautiful Isabella, marry a demon rather than his hated brother Leopold inherit. And would you know it, fate obeyed. As the dark walls of Drakenhof were lashed with rain, a lone individual rode into the court. And upon sight of this figure, the priest of Sigmar who was tending to von Drac fainted, passed away. And this mysterious figure was none other than Vlad von Karstein.
No. Holy shit. I would never like give my daughter's hand to a guy like that. Holy shit. Look, he doesn't even have a nose, man. Oh my god. She tells this story pretty well. She does a really good job. But I had to like laugh a little bit when I saw the picture of the lady from the game there. This one. It was such a serious story, and then you have this like game character that's just the NPC standing there with their like thingy. But holy crap, this guy looks horrific.
Fine, a noble from quote far away.
And
he was here to marry Isabella and inherit the lands of 𝗬𝗏. Isabella herself, it must be said, fell for him immediately. And though von Drac was notoriously a bit of a hard ass, really, he found himself agreeing to this bequeathment. And that very night, they were married.
What?
Isabella married Vlad from Karstein, and with it, Vlad inherited the titles of the soon passing away von Draken. The marriage...
But, hey, bro, maybe he was like looking very differently when he came in there. Maybe he lost his nose later, you know? Maybe.
Inherited the titles of the soon passing away von Draken. The marriage was performed, and Vlad von Karstein, for his part, passed his very first decree that Leopold, the uncle of Isabella, be thrown from the highest tower of the castle. No. And yes, we know, Vlad von Karstein was a vampire, and soon enough Isabella was too. But Vlad wasn't content with just the lands of 𝗬𝗏. Like any self-respecting elector count, he had his eyes on a larger prize. Rulership of the Empire of Man itself.
Wow.
Not content to be a vampire count, he wanted to be a vampire emperor. And so he did what any self-respecting elector count would opt to do in such a scenario.
Tried to
waged
murder?
a civil war.
Oh, yeah.
Not the first, and not the last in the Empire's history. And it should be said that his subjects actually really liked Vlad. Following the chaos and horrors of the von Drac rulership, Vlad von Karstein actually cared a little bit for his people, or at least cared for good governance. He inspired loyalty in his troops.
Wow, I guess in such a horrible world, it doesn't require that much to be liked. You don't need to do that much. It's like, we're gonna have, it's a free time on Fridays, guys. And then everybody's like, holy shit, this guy likes us. Or something, I don't know. Probably not the best, like, example.
People, or at least cared for good governance. He inspired loyalty in his troops. And it seemed that he himself was immortal, that he could not be killed. Even if there were stories from his servants that said he never took food and would never wander the castles during the day. It really does say something about Sylvania when the best ruler that they've ever had was a bloodthirsty monster. In a very literal sense.
Whoa.
And in his war against the Reichland and many other provinces of the Empire, he came very close to succeeding.
Wow.
In fact, he besieged Altdorf itself, and it was only through the betrayal of his kin, Manfred von Karstein, that he became undone.
Damn.
You see, Vlad had originally been gifted a ring of immortality by the great necromancer of Nagash, that's the whole thing. And this protected him from the armaments of his enemies. This information was leaked to the Empire, and the great master thief Felix stole the ring from Vlad.
Wow.
And this allowed him to be killed by none other than the Grand Theogenist of the Empire, the head of the Sigmarite Church.
Wow.
And it is said that Isabella herself became possessed by demons and despair upon the death of her lover. Now, Manfred von Karstein himself eventually went on to inherit the lands of Sylvania, and he is the contemporary ruler of Sylvania itself.
I love that he has, like, is it called a scythe? This one? That is very epic, man. But holy shit, he basically stole the throne, like, or the, whatever it's called. Wow, sneaky bastard.
The lands of Sylvania. And he is the contemporary ruler of Sylvania itself. And he is a powerful lord, but not just in strength of arms. He is a manipulative political figure. And he's also incredibly savvy when it comes to magic. He's very powerful with magic. Part of this is down to the fact that he plundered many Nehekaran tombs looking for the secrets of necromancy as left by Nagash. And as a result of its troublesome nature, shall we say, Sylvania is no longer recognized by the Empire as its own separate province.
Yeah.
That means that it no longer has an elector count, formally. Manfred von Karstein might recognize himself.
I'm a voter. That was so good. Well, I guess after like the province becoming like vampire land and rebelling against the emperor, I guess it's not that weird that they're like, nah, you're not gonna have a vote anymore. But it's very cool.
Formally, Manfred von Karstein might recognize himself in that capacity, but it doesn't make it so. Indeed, the lands of Sylvania itself have been folded into the ownership of Ostermark, which is a little bit of a mixed blessing. In reality, Sylvania itself is still firmly ruled by Manfred von Karstein. The land itself is hostile to travelers, the dead rise, and vampires in that area claim the blood tax. A tax which gives new meaning to the whole, oh, the nobles are bleeding me dry. It's not currency, it's not gold that they pay. They do give their blood to vampires in Sylvania. All peasants are expected to do so.
Wow.
But that's not to say that life for Sylvanian peasants is much different than anywhere else. They still work, they still toil. And in fact, many of them are happy with their vampire overlords.
Wow, that is a good like twist kind of a thing. But I guess it's all about like perspective, man.
I for one welcome them. That said, Sylvania itself in the very ground, even before the coming of Vlad von Karstein, Sylvania has been cursed. Necromancers in the ancient past used to work there, and there is often warp storms that occur, which deposit large amounts of warp stone into the area. This is, again, magical radiation. Imagine the opening sequence of Smallville, over and over again. And the magic that comes from this stone has radiated throughout the soil, throughout the land, and it has made the dead lie a little bit restless, which means that if you happen to be in the vampire business of raising the dead, your work isn't so hard. In fact, this might have been one of the things that attracted Vlad to the area in the first place. And indeed, the restless undead comprise of most of the armies of the vampire counts when they do march. But you're not just dealing with...
That is very cool. That is very cool. That is very cool. So you are like vampires, but you're also necromancers. Or they are, basically. Or not all of them, maybe. But a lot of them. Maybe. Half of them. Quarter. I don't know. I don't know. But it's cool.
Skeletons and zombies here, which they do have in pretty big numbers. In fact, to face the vampire counts on the field of battle is to face mostly legions of faceless undead. These worthless corpses, often serving to simply bog down the enemy. But the vampires also employ various undead animals. You have feral wolves and bats, and even these mutated, monstrous vampires known as the Vargeists and Vargulfs. These are hideous monsters that can consume men in a single bite. And the vampire counts don't lack in cavalry either. There is the Blood Knights that we mentioned before. These are some of the greatest knights in all of the old world. They may be vampires, but all that does is make them stronger and more frightening. In fact, Blood Knights rival even Bretonnian knights in terms of power. And of course, there are the vampires themselves. The von Karstein family aren't the only ones that reside within Sylvania, even if they are the strongest, but they have large broods of vampires. And each one of them is worth a battalion of mortal men.
Wow, this is so cool. I love this. I love this. When I first heard about vampire pirates, and I was thinking that is a little bit funky, but also a little bit cool. And now, maybe these aren't the vampire pirates though. I haven't heard anything about pirates right now, but vampires in general here, epic as epic can be. It's so epic, so epic.
Fight with supernatural speed and cunning, and many of them have several lifetimes worth of magical ability and capacity. Of course, these vampires are the linchpin of the vampire count forces. Because they raise the dead to form the bulk of their armies, that means if they die and their magical energy is ended, then their entire army can collapse. The mindless dead will fall easily by the wayside. Interestingly as well, you can often tell when a vampire army is on the march because there are dark clouds that will come with it, as they have to manipulate the sky in order to prevent the sun from burning them to ash.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier when it was talk about what is it called again? The Count or the Van Hunkerton? I don't remember his name, but when he was he was only walking around his palace or whenever it was dark and stuff like that. So I was thinking how is it gonna be out in the battlefield if they have to win the war within a couple of hours in the nighttime, and then when daytime comes around, it's just bam. So you just need to survive until then. But if they can manipulate the weather and make big dark clouds, then they have solved that. I'm sorry if I'm doing this a lot, but I have one piece of hair in my mustache that is tickling me in my nose. It sucks. It's an off-road here.
Telltale sign as well is that of the infamous Black Coach.
Whoa.
The vampire count armies are pretty cool, to be honest. I'm a really big fan of them and the gothic horror that they imbue.
Yeah.
And they're slotted neatly and tightly into the political framework of the Empire.
Wow.
There have been many successive vampire wars, and Sylvania is always making itself feel felt throughout history. It's hard to speak of the Empire without mentioning or acknowledging Sylvania itself and the vampire problem that often plagues the Empire. But there's not just vampire counts in Sylvania, there are vampire counts spread across the old world. Even Bretonnia has Mousillon, a section of their kingdom that is controlled by a vampire. This is the famous Red Duke. So don't be fooled, vampires are a problem, they need to be dealt with, and there are some people out there who plan to make that so, but maybe we'll talk about them in a different video. And now we come to the dogs of war, mostly those coming from 𝗦cie and 𝗦cie. So up to this point, we have discussed a lot of different factions, peoples, armies, races, whatever you want to call them. Many ways of living and fighting. And most of them have believed in something. Either the bull god Hashut, or the glory of Sigmar.
Hell yeah.
Well, the dogs of war are no different, except the thing that they believe in is money.
We've got to have money.
To them, money is everything. And that makes sense. They are mercenaries.
Wow, and they look so cool. It's like a good variety here, it seems like. You have this pirate-looking guy, you have this... you got some green skins on the right side. You have the dwarf. You have, is this an ogre or maybe something like that? and then you have someone that is looking like Roman, like warriors. It seems like you have a good variety there. They just want some goddamn coin, man. Gotta get rich somehow.
A ragtag group of mercenaries. And owing only their allegiance to money and being mercenaries, it makes sense that they are comprised of various different races, various different ethnicities, various different peoples from throughout the entire world. You've got ogres, dwarfs, giants, even, I shudder to say it, halflings. And if there is one specific place that the people of the old world think of when they hear the term mercenaries, it is, without a doubt, 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶. 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 is a direct parallel to Italy and Rome, down to basically being a Pig Latin translation of it. In fact, 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 has an ancient empire in its past known as 𝗦𝗻𝗻s. So yeah, 𝗦𝗻𝗻s itself, by the way, is still a very fabulously wealthy city in 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶. And the reason for some of their ancient success was that they traded and learned from the High Elves, a mystical race of elves who were many times more advanced than the humans.
Cool.
Now these days, 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 is home to a lot of merchants and tradesmen. And much like the real world, specifically Venice and the Italian city-states, these rich merchants often clash with one another, and that gives rise to mercenaries. Now, in terms of the setting of Warhammer, in terms of the games, 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 itself hasn't really been touched on too much. In fact, 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 are one of the older additions to the setting, and really, a lot of the writings that we do have on them stems from the older style of Games Workshop writing. Back in the early days of Warhammer, the writings for these factions were a little bit more comical. They had a little bit more parody to them.
Oh, this is interesting. I feel like I'm learning so much, and I love that she is doing a really good job. I love her. She's amazing. She's amazing, and you should really like go to her channel, check it out, like subscribe and stuff like that. I'm gonna post a link to the original video in the description. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe on my channel as well. Of course. Thank you. Ring the bell maybe even, if you want to like get notified. But this is so cool. I'm learning about not only the factions, but also like how the lore works and how it has been written before and stuff like that. I love that she's like sharing facts, a lot of facts. So cool.
A lot more tongue-in-cheek. So to give you a bit of an idea, there is a famous 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 inventor known as Leonardo da Miraglio. Or there is the great 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 explorer, Marco Colombo.
No,
in fact,
that is basically... Oh, that is so cool. They're making a parody of real people. That is so nice. That is so nice, I love it.
Colombo is said to have discovered the New World. And actually, this gave 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 a bit of a head start in that new continent. 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶 has a bunch of colonies spread throughout the New World. And the city that Colombo hails from, 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏, is a major hub between the New World and the Old. So no doubt there is a lot of growing that this faction will probably do. And similarly, a lot of the names of units and characters for the Dogs of War are similarly a bit silly. But nevertheless, the Dogs of War are a very interesting army. In fact, you used to be able to take some of their mercenary units into other factions. So if you're playing as the Empire, for example, you can take some Dogs of War units.
Cool.
But as an army of themselves, Dogs of War tend to come with a backbone of kind of standard 𝗦ci𝗰𝗋 troops, armed with the signature long pike. And to be honest, they take anybody who is just looking for a good meal and a bit of payment. And actually, arguably the most important unit to the Dogs of War as an army is the Paymaster. This is the person who is responsible for pulling up the vast wealth required to hire, to maintain a Dogs of War mercenary army.
Cool, you have the Paymaster? Wow, with a chest? That is so cool. That's really cool.
And the Paymaster divvies out that wealth to the units, maintaining morale. In fact, they often bring their chest with them as a visual reminder to the mercenary forces to remind them of what they fight for.
Money.
And because almost anything and anyone can be convinced to fight for money, the Dogs of War have access to units called the Regiments of Renown. These are stranger bands of kind of legendary characters and regiments and forces, and they can comprise of very different units.
This sounds cool. This sounds really cool. So at first I was feeling like, it's like vanilla army, or like it's not really hype army. But now I'm starting to get a feeling that we're getting some good stuff here. Maybe that there's some legends, maybe there's some epic fighters going on. Maybe there's a dwarf that has cut his beard and have like a mohawk, and he's ready to fight for some money and death. Maybe not. And maybe there's a vampire that's like, I want to have more money so I can buy some people to drink their blood. I have so bad examples. It's horrible. It's horrifyingly bad. An ogre that just wants to be able to afford like a good vacation at in Mali, and he wants to have a good margarita or something. I don't know. There's a lot of things that can happen.
So for example, you might get druids or lizard men.
Wow.
And while I called the Empire Army pretty toolboxy, that they had a tool for every single problem, and the Dogs of War, while they might not have a tool for every situation, they can certainly buy one when needed.
Nice.
Plus, they have these guys. And
What
a quick
the
note
hell?
on 𝗦cie. Tilia and 𝗦cie are often conflated as the same place, but in reality, they are bitter rivals to one another. 𝗦cie is essentially fantasy Spain, and they also have a presence in the New World as well. They also provide a lot of units for the Dogs of War. The 𝗦cians are a very proud people. They have a ton of merchants as well. They are a very rich country, and it is often said in the Empire that if you confuse an 𝗦cian for a Tilian, they will draw swords. Of course, this doesn't exactly stop the ignorance of Empire soldiers. And 𝗦cians often do a lot of their trading to the south and with Araby. So that's the Dogs of War. They're a bit of an interesting army. They were never one of the major ones. But hey, who doesn't love mercenaries?
Yeah.
And oh boy, here we go. It's Greenskins.
Yeah.
Now, following the success
Greenskins.
of Lord of the Rings, a movie that I am growing increasingly aware is quite old now. Which kind of means that I'm getting old now.
I watched all of the Lord of the Ring movies again not long ago when I had COVID, and it was so strange looking at them now. It's probably been 10 years since I saw them last, and they age really well, I think, but it is like a little bit how can I say it? Like, you see it's an older movie.
This is meant to be a fun segment. Let's stick with the fun. I'm sure most people watching this know what an orc is.
Yeah.
But in Warhammer Fantasy, they are a little bit different from standard fantasy fare. So let's engage in a little act of imagination.
Hell yeah.
This is fantasy after all.
Shit.
First, I want you to
fits.
imagine an army of creatures that are larger than man, stronger than full-grown man, and that live only to fight and are also supernaturally good at it. And in fact, that is the only love in their life. Basically, it's WWE in the 80s. Then I want you to imagine that they are fungi that emit spores.
That is such a cool fact, and so strange with the orcs, that if you kill, I might be butchering this, if you kill him, it's gonna like spread spores and it's gonna spawn more orcs over time. And that is so weird. That is so weird to me, but it's also so cool. They're fungi?
These shed from their skin as they rampage around, and even when they're killed, and eventually those spores settle on the ground.
That is so cool. Yeah, when you put it like this, it's even funnier. I'm sorry about like the lighting on my face and everything. It's so weird, but it's because my window here has too much light coming in from it. I'm sorry.
And grow into more of those creatures. These are the Greenskins. And it must be
So
said that
cool.
they are having a whale of a time.
I love it.
Seriously, they love their life as rampaging monsters. Indeed, the Greenskins are well known and not well loved for their warlust. And I'm specifically using the term warlust there, not bloodlust. And the reason for that is that bloodlust implies some sort of level of cruelty. But Greenskins don't believe themselves as cruel. It's not that Greenskins necessarily enjoy hurting others, although they probably do
You just like to fight, man. And that is okay.
a little. It's more so that they just want to fight. There's an adorable simplicity to it, though take note that orcs are frequently voiced like they are football hooligans.
Yeah, I've been playing Space Marine 1. That is 40k though. That is not fantasy, but I feel like the orcs on both sides seems to have like a lot of similarities, but they're speaking like in a really funny British like way, and it's so much fun. They're like, Spice Marine, we gotta kill the Spice Marine. It's so funny. I just love it.
Now, greenskins come in 3 types. It's not just orcs. There's also goblins and squigs.
What the hell? Look at those noses. Those noses are freaky as hell. Whoa.
Squigs are not green, though. Orcs are the largest, most brutish, the strongest forces that comprise the backbone of a greenskin tribe. In contrast, goblins are small and cowardly, but they do possess a malicious cunning. And squigs can be described more like livestock than anything else. They are routinely hunted by their greenskin brethren for food, and larger squigs are used in combat, almost like a mount by goblins.
Wow. I'm not sure if this counts for fantasy, but I got told in chat while I was playing Space Marine that the squigs in 40k at least, they can be used as a lot of different things. They can be mushed to oil for machinery, and they can, I think they could be eaten. I think she maybe said that as well. But the most fun thing that I heard was that some orcs use the squigs as hair, because they don't have hair naturally or something, and they want to look cool, so they use squigs.
Now, that's not to say that there aren't other types of greenskins as well. You get, for example, the black orcs that were created by the Chaos Dwarves, as we talked about earlier. And there's also the night goblins as well, who are the sneakiest of goblins. They have made stealth and guerrilla fighting into an art form.
Wow.
And greenskins have often occupied as a really big threat to the world of Warhammer at large. Frequently, the Empire, for example, is invaded or rampaged along by greenskin forces. And in fact, it was the threat of greenskins that helped Sigmar unite the tribes that went on to become the Empire of Man. And it is also the threat of greenskins that has led to the historic alliance between Man and Dwarf.
They're everywhere.
Basically, they can both agree that greenskins are pretty rubbish. And it was this alliance of Dwarf and Man that cast orcs out of the lands that now belong to the Empire. Temporarily. But even to this day, orcs mostly exist within a place of the world called the Badlands, especially around an area known myopically as the World's Edge Mountains. But even to this day, greenskins are nevertheless a huge threat to the civilized world. And that's not to say that orcs aren't civilized. I mean, perhaps to the Empire or Cathay, the orcs and greenskins are not that well organized, but they are organized. In fact, occasionally greenskins arrange themselves into these massive hordes, war parties that they call 𝗦ci. That is said.
Yeah, Vag. I've seen this in my comments a lot, and I've started to understand that it's their kind of way of like shouting war, isn't it?
With the capitals. And 𝗦ci are nuts. They are huge armies of greenskins, where the strongest, the scariest, the most frightening greenskins have risen all the way to the top. And these scariest greenskins end up becoming the de facto rulers of orcs. A great example of this is Grimgor Ironhide. He is the biggest black orc. And unlike many human or elf commanders, he will go to where the fighting is thickest in a battle. In fact, many orcs believe him to be utterly immortal. Him and the other black orcs that trudged out east. There's also a fun greenskin known as 𝗦ci the Slaughterer. If you remember the great necromancer Nagash that we spoke about in the Vampire Count section, he had a magical artifact known as the Crown of Sorcery. And through some coincidences, it ended up in the hands of a petty orc war boss.
That is so cool. He ended up having that? Wow.
𝗦cie. 𝗦cie put it on, and, well, the results have been pretty explosive. Some of Nagash's soul, some of his powers were residual within the Crown of Sorcery, and now they have possessed 𝗦cie. Kind of. 𝗦cie still is firmly in control. You see, greenskins may be relatively simple, but they've got a lot of willpower, and they're pretty resolute. And this is why many of them can't be corrupted by chaos.
Yeah.
They're not as weak-willed as men. They got fighting to do. You can take over their minds all you like. They think with their fists. And the result of this is that 𝗦cie and his crown frequently argue with one another as to what to do next. I can actually think of no better hell for Nagash than to be arguing constantly with this orc.
Oh my god.
Thanks to the crown, 𝗦cie does now command great magical powers. In fact, his magical ability is almost unrivaled in the entire world, except for perhaps by some of the greatest High Elven Magisters.
Wow.
It's basically an orc with his hands on the nuclear button. And truly, there is a simplicity to the greenskins that is very refreshing, honestly. Especially having just talked about the vampire counts. And this...
Yeah, I like that a lot with the greenskins. It seems like they're just going... They have simple truth, that is fighting. And as I understand it, they have a little bit of comedy to them as well, don't they? It's really cool. I love it.
Simplicity also finds its way into how greenskins field their armies. Orcs make up the bulk of the greenskin forces, although there's also goblins too who do fulfill the important job of dying. And also, I guess, being a minor distraction. You can tell that in greenskin society, goblins are the subservient group to...
Yeah, sorry for mentioning that again, but I felt that while I was playing like Space Marine. Space Marine. This one time in Space Marine. But like you get these goblins that are like running in, trying to hit you, but they don't do anything. Hey, yeah, so they're just like I was actually asking chat like, why are they here? They don't do anything. They don't do damage, and I could just roll over them and they're dead. But as I understand it, they have just been told, run in and fight.
To the orcs. Orc cavalry ride giant hogs and massive wolves. Even squigs in a pinch. Basically anything they can get their hands on. Greenskins also deploy larger units. There is the Arachnos spider, which have been tamed by forest goblins. These are massive spiders that carries a bunch of goblins on its back who shoot their arrows at their opponents.
I hate spiders, so this is a little bit like, oh, freaky. Getting goosebumps.
That's a pretty terrifying sight, especially for the arachnophobes out there. And believe it or not, greenskins have even...
I'm not like insanely against spiders, I just don't like them at all.
mastered the use of artillery. Now, that's not to say they have rocket batteries or organ guns or cannons. No, they've got something much more ingenious. Allow me to introduce you to the Doom Diver.
What?
AKA self-guided missiles.
Self-guided missiles? He just has the missile on his head and wings and they just launch it? I love this.
Raytheon got nothing on this one.
Wow.
This is a catapult that launches a goblin in a wingsuit high into the air, who then directs said salvo into the target that is to be hit. Screaming all the way. They still haven't quite figured out how to get the goblin safely down. Still though, you can't argue with the results. And next up, I'm gonna briefly touch on 𝗦cie. 𝗦cie themselves aren't a distinct faction in Total War Warhammer, and in Warhammer Fantasy, they were never blessed with a full army battle tome. They have existed in supplements, and they have existed as part of the world and lore for the longest time though, so I think they deserve a little bit of a mention. So 𝗦cie is south of the old world. It sits just west of 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶𝗹𝗀. Yes, that 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶𝗹𝗀, the ancient city of necromancers.
Cool. But it looks like a really big area. So it is almost like, yeah, it's a little bit sad that they don't have more, because they could be super cool. Maybe they are cool though. Let's see.
𝗦ci𝗰𝗶𝗃, yes, that 𝗦ci𝗰𝗃, the ancient city of necromancers. And it is governed by the Sultan of all 𝗦cie. There is a wide dichotomy in Arabian society, mostly between that of the ultra-wealthy and the not-so-ultra-wealthy. I'm noticing a theme in all these human societies. I'm also noticing that it's not entirely unrealistic. The fabulously wealthy merchants are somewhat at the mercy of the hardened desert nomads. Because those are the guys that kind of get to make the decision as to whether or not the trade caravans are able to make it through the desert.
Makes sense.
Maybe there's a lesson to be gleaned here. The cities of Araby are said to be some of the most beautiful in all of the world, and even have a bit of a nightlife, if that can be believed. Slavery also abounds, and religion isn't as mandated in Araby as perhaps some other places in the world. Some people choose to worship the jinn, although most people don't worship anything. And interestingly, while worship is tolerated in Araby, there are certain gods that have been banned. Notably, Cain, the elven god of murder, and Sigmar as well.
Sigmar?
Ooh, drama. The military might of Araby reflects the country itself. They are lavishly armed and well-armored soldiers. And they have the grit and determination that you can only get growing up in a desert. And some of the stranger units that they traditionally have fielded in battle are battalions of eunuchs, camel riders, and even sorcerers atop flying carpets.
Cool.
Mighty elephants are also seen on the battlefield when Araby goes to war. And interestingly, magic in Araby is quite weak. The winds of magic spill from the north, from the frozen roof of the world, and Araby, being quite far south, doesn't have as easy access to the winds of magic. And as a result, most of the magic that stems from Araby comes from the jinn. These are demons bound to specific objects and locations. So it's a really interesting place, though it's a little bit underutilized, I think, in the setting of Warhammer. And now we come to the monstrous beastmen. These creatures, the beastmen, are why people do not go into the forest. The beastmen are hideous
Oh my god, they look scary as hell. Look at that mouth. Look at that head. He has like a sword out of his head, I guess. His face. Wow, and the horns all over the place. I would be a little bit scared to go into the woods if these were like lurking around. If you go down in the woods today, you're sure of a big surprise.
Aberrations, twisted abominations of man and animal,
wow,
fused together by the baleful energies of chaos itself. They come in many forms, but uniformly they seek to ravage landscapes, despoil cities, and erect profane altars known as hearthstones to the dark gods of chaos. Ultimately, beastmen detest civilization because it is something they can never know. They cannot create great works of art. They can only hate, they can only destroy. And they know that. And that's the worst part of all. The beastmen were born at the same time as chaos itself, when a massive magical gate at the North Pole collapsed in on itself. And with the door knocked off its hinges, the energies of magic flowed freely into the world. And this warped the world at every level. And this is when the first beastmen were born.
Holy crap.
And they themselves spread out into the world, just as the energies of chaos did. They were a race that the young humans were powerless against. That is, of course, until Sigmar Heldenhammer united the tribes and cast the beastmen into darkness. I think a word that describes beastmen is resentment. They resent humanity. They live tortured lives. And much in the same way that there are many different animals that roam the land, sea, and air, so too are there many different types of beastmen. The most numerous of these are the goat-like gores and the larger bestigores, because they're the best. There's also the weaker ungors who are like bottom of the totem pole of beast folk. But above all of them are the minotaurs who tower over any other beastman. And
wow, they were really cool.
They are terrifying monsters, and if
that big, huge. They're huge.
If you've ever played Vermintide 2 and had one of these come at you, you know why. Cavalry-wise, beastmen ride tuskgores and razorgores on chariots. Not to mention the centaurs, who are a strange fusion of man and horse. And other various monsters join beastmen as well. You have the one-eyed cygors, who launch huge rocks
That is really cool Beastman creature. Holy shit.
across the battlefield. And there are chaos giants as well who are drawn to these massive herds.
Okay, maybe it wasn't a Beastman because we're talking about other things now. But this is huge. This is so cool. All of the teeth and like tentacles out of his body. And what the hell is going on with his face, bro? It's nasty. Oh, this is really fucked up. And compared to like the size of one man there, look at this. They're so small compared to this beast. Wow. I kind of hope I'm gonna meet something like this in Total War when I try the game. That would be so sick.
Of beastmen in search of food. There is also the ancient Jabberslife, which is honestly a monster that simply defies description. It's a large thing with
everything.
appendages. Speaking of large appendages, there's also the Gorgon. This is a cyclopean creature which can carve apart entire regiments with its massive blades.
What the hell? That is hardcore.
And though beastmen aren't exactly the most organized group at all, they mostly keep to the dark forests, picking away at the edges of civilization.
Wow.
They have still had great leaders in their times. Perhaps one of the most famous is Khazrak One-Eye. This was a beastman who was queerly intelligent, and he has come to rule the Drakeweld forest in Middenland. And actually, he came to prominence because he was able to strategically defeat an entire army that rode out from Middenland to defeat him and his herd. There is also a beastman known as Morgor the Shadowgrave.
What?
This is an ancient beastman whose very presence distorts the ground around him.
He looked horrendous and so cool.
They said that wherever he goes, corruption follows, and worse still, each time he dies, he just seems to appear somewhere else. And if you can believe it, Morgor was said to have been born from a human mother. Grotesquely, he is meant to have torn himself from her womb.
No,
and then
image
killed
not
the
found.
father when he attempted to kill it. Morgor
Holy shit. Wow, demon child indeed.
then wandered the world for over 3,000 years. Until finally, it was tracked down by Lord Arloth of the Wood Elves, who incinerated it using sap from the Oak of Ages. This is the most secret and ancient tree to the Wood Elves. So beastmen aren't exactly pushovers, and they have been known to terrorize the world for sure. They're one of my own personal favorites, and I have a little army of them myself, so don't discount them. And that is the...
Yeah, just really quickly before she like does the ending there, I feel like she probably does soon. But the Beastman, I just wanted to really quickly say that in the beginning, I was having this feeling like the Beastman is just like filler people like in the game that you run around and you need to have like some like independent like craziness going on that you can meet sometimes. But from her description, I feel like they have more to give than to be fillers. They are really cool and I love them. I want to have some beastmen myself.
Old world, that is the majority of factions and peoples in the old world, though you might have noticed some were missing.
Yeah.
Most notably the lizard man,
Yeah.
Skaven, and elves. And that's because I'm going to cover them in my next video on every single Warhammer Fantasy faction here. And if you missed my previous one covering Cathay, Kislev, Ogres, and more, check it out here. And as always, a huge thanks to my patrons, especially Stephen Jackson, Sonic Bread, and Beauregard Quitman. And this content takes a lot of time to make, produce, and edit, so if you do want to help support the channel, check out patreon.com/discoursminiatures.
Guys.
It's only thanks to my patrons that this content is possible, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye!
Wow, yeah, you better like and subscribe here. She
it
mentioned like part basically 3 of this, but I need to do some digging and see if I can find it, because at the moment I don't have that one. I only have these 2, the part 1 and the old world. I want to learn about the high elves, the wood elves, high elves, and lizard people, the rat people. I want to learn about them all. This was so much fun to react to, and I hope you had a great time as well. I'm sorry for like my face being like very, very light and very dark at the same time. It's the goddamn light from outside, man. I need to try and fix it. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're gonna have a great day. And be sure to like and subscribe, and maybe ring the bell. There is links to Discord, to Twitch in the description. Twitch, where I go live every weekday, and Discord, where we hang out and just talk, chill out. It's fantastic, and thank you so much. I appreciate all the support, and I'm just loving this journey. I am so happy that I have the possibility to just like dive into it and enjoy everything. And everything is new to me, and that is so much fun. I love exploring new things. This is so good. Thank you so much. See you later, alligator. Bye bye.